Yeah, just a couple things that have come up with EB-1A profile building. First thing that has come up a lot this and in the last few weeks has been how to find peer review opportunities. How do you find those kinds of opportunities? And something that a lot of people in my private group have been telling me has worked for them has been to reach out to program chairs of conferences, committee members of some of these upcoming conferences, and to essentially just volunteer to peer review for them. You might not hear back from a lot of people, but if you do this enough, you will most likely hear back from some of these committee chairs, which these conversations are going to most likely lead to peer review opportunities, assuming you have the expertise that is required to help these upcoming conferences review their paper submissions. Something else you can do is you can attend local chapter events. You can go to local IEEE events or ACM events and see if you can get involved in some of their upcoming conferences by speaking to people there. They might be able to introduce you to people who are program chairs of these upcoming conferences and are looking for peer reviewers. So a lot of these opportunities don't really have official application processes, but you can still try to get peer review opportunities for these upcoming conferences simply by talking to some of the committee chairs of these upcoming conferences. So that is how you can start landing peer review opportunities. Something else you can do is contact university professors. You can talk to professors who you studied under when you were a student. You can also reach out to professors who currently teach at your alma mater and with whom you have never interacted, but you can still ask them if they're involved in any upcoming conferences or journals in your field. That can be a way to land peer review opportunities. Another way is to get in touch with professors at local universities, ask if you can just quickly chat about the journals and conferences that they are involved with. That can be another way to land peer review opportunities. So a lot of these peer review opportunities aren't really public, nor is there an application process for a lot of them, but you can try to get them by reaching out to professors, program committee chairs, people who are peer reviewing for those conferences as well, if you can find those people. That's just something that kind of came up. A lot of people have been asking me about peer review opportunities. Something else that came up was original contributions. A lot of people have been asking if they can claim original contributions if they have a patent. The answer is most likely no. If your patent is not in use, or if your patent's on use, or has not gotten significant attention, simply having a patent alone is not going to help you claim the original contributions criterion. If you want to claim the original contributions criterion, you are going to have to show that your original contributions got significant attention in the field and or have been used commercially by other top US companies or just other top companies in the country in which you work. Without those two elements, you will most likely not have a strong original contributions claim. Also, you don't necessarily need a patent in order to claim the original contributions criterion. You can have strong evidence for original contributions and be able to claim the criterion without having patented those original contributions. So that's just something that came up. And sometimes, and I don't know how often this happens, but sometimes lawyers can miss out on original contributions claims, especially if you, the applicant, does not provide enough context around the original contributions. Just because you think something is an original contribution does not necessarily mean that you have sufficiently explained the significance of that contribution to a lawyer. And if you don't provide that proper contextual evidence, it's not going to be apparent to a lawyer that you have strong original contributions, evidence, and if it's not obvious to a lawyer, it's probably not going to be obvious to an officer. So just make sure you provide enough context around the significance of your original contributions, the assumptions you make about your field, about the significance of your work are not always going to be readily obvious or apparent. So just make sure you are providing enough context around your original contributions such that someone who has never worked in your field will be able to pick up on the significance of your work. And what you can do there is provide comparative evidence. For example, talk about maybe how your work has positioned you as one of the very top professionals in your field because your original contributions made this specific impact on a bunch of these companies within your field, which are considered some of the top companies in your field. You could make that argument. Just providing enough evidence so that someone who has never worked in your field can understand that original contributions have gotten significant attention and or are being commercially used by other companies. And a lot of that is going to come down to how you define significant attention and also what kind of commercial evidence you can show for your original contributions. So those are just two things that came up this week. Feel free to ask questions if anyone has questions. Anyone have questions? Something else that came up. It was really just a conversation I had with someone who this month alone is going to be speaking at several different conferences. What was he able to do to land that number of speaking opportunities? And what was he able to do to get to a point where he's now getting referred lots of opportunities? Based on a conversation I had with him a couple of months ago, what he has been continually doing is outreach, reaching out to a lot of professionals in his field and sharing his expertise, especially professionals who are doing the kinds of activities that he wanted to be doing. And now he's gotten to a point where he is getting those opportunities to do the activities he wants to be doing. He has gotten the judging opportunities he has wanted. He has gotten the speaking opportunities that he has always wanted. It has just come down to starting a lot of conversations over a long enough period of time. That, I think, was what helped him get to a point where he is now continually getting opportunities, continually getting referred opportunities. So for those of you who are just starting with outreach, just know that it's not really weeks, it takes months of just continually reaching out to professionals in your field, showcasing your expertise to them, and essentially making a case for how you can be useful to these professionals who are organizing some of these opportunities. How can you be a judge? How can you be a good speaker for them? How can you be a good co-author for a paper? Those are just considerations that you are going to have to be able to take into account when you're doing outreach so that you are able to show how your expertise can contribute to what they're working on and as a result get considered for some of those opportunities, get included, be able to get involved. So that's just something about outreach that a lot of people ask, like how long should I be doing outreach for? How much outreach should I be doing? I would recommend 1 to 2 hours at least every single day when you're first starting off, and to just get into the habit of doing outreach pretty much every single day for weeks on end. Try for a couple of months and see what happens. For a lot of people who are already distinguished professionals in their field, from what I've seen, they've been able to get a lot of significant profile building opportunities simply from just doing a lot of outreach, especially getting opportunities that are not really publicly advertised. So it's just about doing that outreach to land some of those opportunities. Anyone have questions? So I don't see any questions, but what else has come up? I think the topic of reference letters comes up a lot as well. A lot of people want to know more about how to find references. The short answer is to find some of these independent references, you are going to prepare. You're going to want to prepare as early as possible and to start doing outreach as early as possible. That is going to come down to just reaching out to a lot of people who you know to see if they know people who might be willing to provide that independent reference for you. And that most of these people will most likely not pan out. And that is just something you're going to have to get comfortable with, because it is difficult to get independent references from people. So it's just something to keep in mind. But it is possible. I have seen it happen before where people have been able to get references from people who they know. So like indirect, like second or third degree connections. That has happened. And you can also meet people at conferences and events. That is also another way to get independent references. Anyone have questions? So feel free to ask questions in the chat. If you have questions about EB-1A profile building, I can also briefly go through some of the resources that I've been putting together as part of my newsletter. So just to quickly share. So right now, I run a profile building opportunities database as part of my newsletter, which currently has over 400 opportunities in multiple different fields. So these are just the kinds of opportunities you want to be looking into if you're profile building towards EB-1A, and this also applies to O1 and EB-2NW as well, but mostly, just those three. So these are just some of the opportunities that you can be looking into if you are profile building towards EB-1A, and I regularly update this database. Another resource I share as part of my newsletter resources is my AO decisions reviews. These are decisions that go into USCIS's reasoning behind initially denying EB-1A or EB-2NW or O1. So these are just some of the resources I share these are just some of the reviews I share of these decisions where I share profile building insights based on these decisions. And I would encourage that you look at some of these decisions to better understand how USCIS thinks about EB-1A and EB-2NW and O1. So I review these decisions occasionally and provide insights based on what they discuss that could be relevant to profile building. And in addition to that, I also share a bunch of video resources. I've been slowly adding some of the profile building office hours recordings to this video resources folder. And I also have some recorded conversations with EB-1A recipients who have been able to answer some of the questions that a lot of you have been asking me, such as how to find critical role references, what to put in those references, how to get involved in professional organizations. These are just some of the kinds of questions that I have been asking in these recorded conversations with these EB-1A recipients. And as part of my newsletter, you also get access to my private group where people have been actively sharing a lot of profile building opportunities and have been actively also working with each other. There have been a lot of people in the group who have been able to find collaborators, and I regularly hear from these people telling me that they've been able to for example, get published. Recently, someone reached out and said they were able to get published in 2 IEEE conferences with 2 collaborators they had met through the private group. A bunch of people have also been sharing very high-profile profile building opportunities because they are chairing upcoming conferences. So that's what I'm seeing in my private group right now. There are quite a few professionals in there who are regularly looking for collaborators and working with each other and sharing opportunities. So Rajashri asks, where can I find the links or resources? You can find the resources on my profile, and I can also send you a link after this live stream.
I didn't quite catch that. Could you please say that?
So for some reason that just activated my phone, but yeah, that's where you can find the links and resources. Anyone else have questions? But yeah, don't underestimate how much time you can save on profile building by working with other people in your field. By working with other people in your field, you can cover more opportunities because you can divide up, say, the criteria amongst the people you're working with and get one person to focus on judging opportunities, one person to focus on authorship opportunities, and just to collectively come up with opportunities together. You can also work with each other on, say, articles for technical magazines, on journal articles even, although just a heads up, you don't necessarily need journal articles in order to meet the authorship criterion. Technical magazines are enough to meet the authorship criterion, or it could even be professional publications or trade publications. You don't have to go for journal articles. And you can also work together on attending, say, local events. If you are situated near each other, if you live close to each other, you can go to some of these local events, local meetups, local chapter events of organizations of which you are all a part. That can also be something you can do by collaborating with other people in your field who are also profile building. Anyone have questions? Feel free to ask them in the comments. Nikhil asks, what is your take on RFEs? That's a very broad question. I don't really have a specific take on them. I mean, some people are able to get approved after getting an RFE. I've seen that. In fact, one of the EB-1A recipients I spoke to who was able to get EB-1A while still on OPT, he was RFE'd. I think it was questioned on at least 3 of his 4 criteria, and he was able to overcome that RFE. Yeah, that's the extent of what I have on RFEs. I don't really have a specific take. Do you really need a recommendation letters from each company that you work for versus current company to show original contributions, or any other industry expert letters works great too for that matter? I don't think there's a specific requirement for where you get your reference letters. It really depends on what kind of picture you want to paint for original contributions. But if you want to show wider significance for your work, you are probably going to want to get some sort of perspective that discusses the wider significance of your work. Probably maybe someone at another company that you don't work for that has used your original contributions. That is probably a perspective you will want to capture if that is the kind of picture you want to paint. But if you're saying that your original contributions have been used in the field and you can't get anyone to talk about the significance of your work, as in anyone who has used your original contributions, then you're pretty much opening up a possibility of getting questioned on the actual significance of your original contributions. I'm not saying it's a fair question. I'm just saying that's what you could get questioned on. If your original contributions letters all come from, say, your company, and they're all very positive, I mean, they probably are going to be because these people work with you and probably know you personally. So, yeah, if you can't get that outside perspective, then you could get questioned on the wider significance portion of your original contributions claim. Yeah. Anyone else have questions? Any other questions? So just one final thing is you don't want to be profile building with a timeline of like 2 to 3 months unless you already have a really strong profile, or say you have a really strong critical role, original contributions claim, or both, and you're just going to go with those as your final merits evidence. But if your timeline is extremely short, you could get questioned on the sustain a claim portion of the final merits analysis. Not saying that's for sure, but based on the lawyers I've spoken to, that can happen. You can get questioned on final merits on the basis of sustain a claim if you can only show a record of like 2 months of profile building. Scobie judging is questionable and get the R fee. I don't know for sure if it is going to trigger an R fee, but Globee judging is extremely common nowadays, and a lot of people are going for this type of judging. So a strict officer could question you. There is really no need to go for generic opportunities. When you're making the argument that you've risen to the top of your field, you're going for very generic opportunities. So if you go for very generic opportunities, this is from the perspective of an officer who could be questioning you on this. They're going to think you have risen to the top of your field, and then you're going for these like very nondescript generic opportunities. Why were you not able to locate opportunities where you were able to judge more related work as part of your field? Why are you going for this generic opportunity that seems to come up in like 5 out of the 10 cases I review, for example? That's the kind of questioning you could get. So, yeah, it's not definitive in that you won't definitively get an R fee, but you are opening up that possibility because you are going for a very generic opportunity that is coming up very often in profiles. Any other questions? Anyone else have questions? Great. If no one else has any questions, I'll end the stream there. Thanks everyone for joining.